The screen door slammed, so hard it shook the frame. "Don't embarrass us," my mother hissed, her smile frozen for the relatives behind her. "Not today." The smell of grilled meat and sweet perfume drifted past her shoulder. Laughter burst from the backyard like fireworks. I stood there holding a casserole I had woken up at 6 to make. My fiancé, Daniel, tightened his grip on my hand. My father stepped forward, calm as always. That calm was worse than yelling. "You made your choices, Elena," he said. "This reunion is for family. Family." My brother Matt avoided my eyes. My aunt pretended to rearrange plates. No one defended me. "I am family," I whispered. My mother leaned closer. "Not when you insist on living like this." "Like what?" "Independent. Uncontrolled." The door shut in my face. Inside, the music turned up. A toast began. Applause followed. Daniel pulled me back gently. "Let's go." But I didn't move, because I finally understood. They didn't just want me to feel small. They wanted me to feel grateful for it. I didn't start the car right away. Through the windshield, I could see the glow of patio lights and silhouettes moving in rhythm. Someone laughed loudly. It sounded like Matt. My phone buzzed. Family group chat. A photo popped up. Everyone gathered around the picnic table, smiling, arms linked. Caption: "So grateful for a peaceful, drama-free reunion." Peaceful. Drama-free. My empty seat wasn't just empty. It was gone. The chair I would have used had been removed. My mother replied with a heart emoji. No one asked where I was. Daniel looked at me carefully. They didn't even text. I shook my head. This wasn't new. This was just louder. Growing up, my parents believed love meant obedience. When I moved out at 21 instead of working at my uncle's store, my father called it rebellion. When I started my own business, my mother called it pride. They never yelled much. They sighed. They withdrew. They let silence do the work. And tonight, silence slammed a door in my face. Something settled inside me as I stared at that photo. If I was going to survive this family, I would have to stop begging for space at their table. My name is Elena Marlowe. I'm 29 years old. I've paid my own rent since I was 21. I've never asked my parents for money. Not when I ate noodles for a week straight. Not when I slept in my car after losing a short-term lease. Not when my first event client canceled, and I had to refund money I didn't have. I built my event planning business from folding tables and borrowed vans. My parents say I'm dramatic. What they mean is I don't follow their script. When I refused to move back home and manage inventory at my uncle's hardware store, my father said, "You're throwing stability away." When I got engaged to Daniel, who didn't come from money, who worked construction, they said, "You're lowering your standards." Lowering. They spoke softly, but the words always carried weight. At holidays, my mother would introduce me as still figuring things out. I was running a company by then. They didn't shut me out of that reunion because I failed. They shut me out because I wouldn't let them define success for me. And control feels safer than pride to people like my parents. My life wasn't glamorous. Most mornings started before sunrise. I ironed tablecloths while coffee brewed. I scrubbed wax off rented candle holders. I loaded folding chairs into a van that rattled every time I hit a pothole. At night, I answered emails from clients who wanted magic on tight budgets. I gave it to them anyway. Weddings in community halls. Birthday parties in basements. Church anniversaries with paper flowers I arranged by hand. I smiled even when my feet hurt. Every event mattered. Because I remembered what it felt like to be told your celebration wasn't worth showing up for. Daniel helped whenever he could. He carried boxes, fixed broken lights, stayed up late building wooden arches for backdrops. "You're building something real," he would say. My parents never attended a single event I planned. When I invited them, my mother would say, "We don't want to interfere." But they weren't avoiding interference. They were avoiding acknowledgement. And I kept building anyway. Every Wednesday, I passed an older man sitting on a bench outside Porter's Hardware. Neat coat, worn shoes, calm eyes. He watched people carefully, like he was studying something. One rainy afternoon, I noticed he had no umbrella. I walked over and held mine above us both. "You'll get soaked," he said. "I've been soaked before," I replied. He smiled slightly. Kindness without calculation is rare. I shrugged. It shouldn't be. Over the next few weeks, we exchanged small talk. He asked about my work. I told him about centerpieces and tight budgets, about balancing beauty and cost. He listened closely. Once he asked, "Why keep trying if it's this hard?" "Because when people celebrate, they feel seen," I said. "And everyone deserves that." He nodded slowly. I never asked his name. He never offered more than simple stories. But I didn't know then that he was watching more than our conversations. He was watching how I treated the cashier, the delivery driver, the store clerk, and he was deciding something. One afternoon, he approached me as I loaded supplies into my van. "I need help planning a small dinner," he said. "Anniversary. 6 guests." "Of course," I said automatically. "It's modest," he warned. "Very modest." I quoted him a price. He raised an eyebrow. "That seems low." "I can lower it," I replied. "Anniversaries matter." He studied me in a way that made me slightly uncomfortable. "Why discount your work?" he asked. "Because sometimes the memory is worth more than the margin." He smiled faintly. Interesting answer. The dinner was scheduled for 3 weeks later in a small brick hall near the river. When I told my mother about the booking during a brief phone call, she laughed softly. 6 people. That's not growth, Elena. That's charity. It's business, I said. She sighed. You always think heart will pay bills. I didn't argue. Because heart was the only thing no one could take from me. My cousin Tara called the night after the reunion incident. I saw what happened, she said quietly. That was cruel. It's fine, I lied. It's not fine, she insisted. They've been freezing you out for years. You just pretend you don't notice. I stared at the ceiling. Kindness isn't weakness. No, she said. But letting them rewrite your story is. That stuck with me. My parents never shouted insults. They shaped narratives. She's sensitive. She's impulsive. She's stubborn. Over time, people believe them. I started questioning myself. Was I dramatic? Was I reckless? Even when my business numbers proved otherwise, their voices lingered. You'll learn, my mother would say whenever I made a decision without her input. Learn what? That independence equals punishment? After hanging up with Tara, I sat quietly. Maybe kindness wasn't weakness, but maybe boundaries weren't cruelty either. And I had none. The anniversary dinner arrived. The small brick hall transformed under soft string lights and cream linens. I placed candles in glass jars and arranged simple white roses in clusters. 6 guests arrived, dressed elegantly but without fuss. The older man stood near the doorway, watching everything. The atmosphere warmed quickly. Laughter echoed against the brick walls. At one point, the couple held hands and swayed to a slow song Daniel played from a speaker. It felt intimate, intentional. When the evening ended, the older man approached me. You create presents, he said. I set tables. I replied lightly. No, he said. You create presents. He paid without hesitation. No negotiation. As I packed up, he added, Do you ever consider managing something larger? I laughed. Like what? A ballroom. Perhaps, he said, eyes steady. I assumed he was being kind. I didn't know he was testing whether my vision could stretch beyond folding tables. The next Wednesday, the bench outside Porter's was empty. I asked the clerk if he was ill. He left town, she said. Packed up quickly. No goodbye. No explanation. It shouldn't have mattered. But it did. Because for the first time in months, someone had looked at me without judgment. A week passed. Then 2. Work kept me busy. A school fundraiser. A birthday party. A corporate brunch that stretched my limits. My parents remained silent until my mother posted another family photo online. Caption. Grateful for unity. Unity. The word felt sharp. They weren't just excluding me. They were curating a version of reality without me. And I had let them. Then, on a quiet Thursday afternoon, a cream envelope appeared in my mailbox. No return address. Just my name. Inside the envelope was a thick card. Your presence is requested at the Hawthorne estate. Saturday, 5 p.m. Signed only with a single letter, C. My first thought was scam. My second was prank. Daniel read it twice. You know anyone with an estate? No, I said. Tara told me to ignore it. But something tugged at me. The paper felt expensive. The handwriting precise. Saturday came. At 4:30, I sat in my car debating. What if it's nothing? Daniel asked gently. What if it's something? I replied. I remembered the older man's eyes. The way he studied everything. Calloway. It was a guess. At 4:50, I turned the key. If it was foolish, at least it was my choice. The Hawthorne estate sat beyond iron gates taller than any fence I had seen. I almost drove past. The driveway curved through manicured lawns and towering trees. My van looked out of place. The gates opened slowly as I approached. No guard. No intercom. Just silent permission. My heart pounded as the mansion came into view. Stone pillars. Massive windows, glowing gold in the late afternoon light. This wasn't a small dinner venue. This was history. I parked and stepped out carefully, smoothing my dress. Before I could knock, the door opened. A man in a tailored suit stood there. Miss Marlowe, he said. We've been expecting you. And then I saw him. No worn shoes. No bench. Mr. Calloway. Standing tall, composed, and nothing like the quiet observer I knew. You look surprised, he said gently. Understatement, I managed. He gestured for me to step inside. The foyer was breathtaking. Marble floors, grand staircase, chandeliers that looked like frozen waterfalls. I prefer to observe without influence, he said calmly. It reveals character. You were testing me? I asked. I was studying you, he corrected. We sat in a large study lined with books. I owned several historic estates, he explained. Most are underused. Hawthorne needs restoration. Vision. Care. I blinked. You think I can do that? I know you can, he said. I've watched how you treat clients, vendors, strangers. You create loyalty without demanding it. He slid a folder across the table. Partnership agreement. Equity stake. Full creative control. Not employment. Partnership. My throat tightened. Why me? I whispered. Because you were kind when you thought I had nothing to offer. The contract felt heavy in my hands. I thought of my mother's words. Pride doesn't pay bills. This wasn't pride. This was opportunity. You'll oversee restoration, Mr. Calloway said. Turn Hawthorne into a premier event venue. Weddings. Reunions. Galas. Reunions. The word hit hard. What's the catch? I asked. No catch, he replied. Shared profit. Shared responsibility. Daniel squeezed my hand under the table. I could see fear in his eyes. Not fear of failure. Fear of scale. This changes everything, he murmured. It did. If I said yes, there was no going back to folding tables alone. But I had spent years being underestimated. I looked at Mr. Calloway. I accept. He smiled. And in that moment, the door that once slammed in my face felt smaller than ever. The next 6 months were relentless. Restoration required planning, permits, contractors, marketing strategy. I worked 12-hour days overseeing renovations. Daniel managed logistics. Mr. Calloway handled finances quietly but never interfered with creative decisions. We preserved the estate's history while modernizing its function. Grand ballroom polished. Gardens redesigned. Guest suites restored. The first booking came 3 months later. Then another. Then 5. Word spread quickly. Hawthorne Estate became a name people whispered with excitement. For the first time, I wasn't just surviving. I was leading. Local media requested interviews. I agreed carefully. One headline read, Local planner revives historic estate. My photo stood beneath a chandelier. The next morning, my phone rang. It was my mother. We had no idea you were doing so well, she said softly. No apology. Just surprise. We're planning next year's reunion, my mother added. Of course. Where? I asked. Oh, we're still deciding, she said lightly. We thought maybe something larger. Larger. I could hear the shift. Now they wanted association, not reconciliation. Actually, I replied calmly, Hawthorne Estate is hosting private events. Silence. You own that place? She asked. I manage it, I corrected. She cleared her throat. That's impressive. But the tone wasn't pride. It was recalculation. After we hung up, I sat quietly. They hadn't asked how I felt about the reunion. They hadn't acknowledged shutting the door. They simply pivoted. Control takes many forms. Sometimes it's exclusion. Sometimes it's sudden inclusion. That night I made a decision. If they wanted a reunion, they would attend one I hosted. On my terms. I ordered cream envelopes with gold lettering. Hawthorne Estate cordially invites you to the annual Marlowe family reunion. Date. Time. Formal RSVP. Every relative received one, including my parents. When Tara called, she laughed softly. This is bold. It's honest, I said. What are you trying to prove? Nothing, I replied. I'm just opening my door. The RSVPs came quickly. Curiosity is powerful. My mother called 3 days later. You didn't have to make it so grand, she said. I didn't, I answered. I just used the space I have. She paused. We never meant to hurt you, she said carefully. Not we're sorry. Just we never meant to. Intent versus impact. A familiar dance. Come, I said simply. Or don't. This time, the choice was theirs. The day of the reunion arrived warm and clear. Cars lined the long driveway. Relatives stepped out slowly, eyes wide. Whispers followed. She owns this. I didn't know. I stood at the entrance in a simple navy dress. Not flashy. Just steady. My parents arrived last. My mother's posture was stiff. My father's jaw tight. They looked smaller against the estate's stone pillars. Inside, chandeliers glowed softly. Tables arranged elegantly. Music low and warm. Everything felt intentional. Because it was. I greeted guests with calm smiles. When my parents approached, there was a moment of stillness. You didn't have to make us look foolish, my father said quietly. I met his eyes. I didn't, I replied. I invited family. He had no answer. Dinner unfolded beautifully. Laughter echoed through the ballroom. Cousins explored gardens. Children ran across polished floors. At one point, Tara leaned over and whispered, "This feels different." It did. Not because of the mansion. Because of the balance. I wasn't asking to belong. I was hosting. After dessert, I stood near the grand staircase and tapped my glass lightly. Conversations quieted. I built this space because someone believed in me when I had nothing but effort to offer. I began. My parents shifted uncomfortably. If someone closes a door on you, build your own. And leave it open for those who choose respect. Applause rose slowly, then louder. I didn't look at my parents. I didn't need to. The message had landed. Later that evening, my mother approached me privately in the library. I thought control meant protection, she admitted softly. Protection from what? I asked. From failure. From embarrassment. You embarrassed yourselves, I said gently. Not me. Tears gathered in her eyes. My father joined us. We were wrong, he said, voice tight. It wasn't dramatic. It was heavy. I never wanted to compete with you, I told them. I just wanted space. Silence filled the room. Years of tension condensed into that moment. They didn't argue. For the first time, they listened. And listening felt more powerful than any apology. After the guests left, Daniel and I stood alone in the ballroom. You handled that with grace, he said. I handled it with boundaries, I corrected. The difference mattered. My parents stayed late, helping clear small things. Not because I asked. Because they chose to. It was a small gesture, but real. As they prepared to leave, my father paused. You don't need our permission, he said quietly. I never did, I replied. The night air felt lighter. Not because the mansion existed, but because I no longer feared their silence. They couldn't erase me. I had built something too visible. In the weeks after the reunion, something shifted. My parents began asking questions instead of giving advice. How do you handle risk? My father asked during one visit. With planning, I answered. My mother asked about floral choices for upcoming events. Not to criticize, to understand. Mark visited as well. I underestimated you, he admitted bluntly. I nodded. You all did. It wasn't anger. It was fact. Control had shaped our family for years. But control cracks under proof. And proof was everywhere now. Hawthorne Estate continued thriving. Weddings booked a year in advance. Corporate retreats filled weekdays. Garden ceremonies became popular. I hired staff, trained managers, built systems. Every decision was measured, not rushed. The mansion wasn't luck. It was responsibility. Mr. Calloway remained mostly in the background, watching quietly. "You handled your family well," he remarked once. "I handle myself," I corrected. He smiled. That mattered more than I expected. Months later, another reunion approached. This time, my parents asked if I would host again. No assumptions. No entitlement. Just request. I agreed, because now it felt different. They arrived early, helped set up simple decorations. My mother placed centerpieces without comment. My father greeted relatives with calm pride. No one mentioned the door that once slammed. But everyone remembered, and memory carries weight. During that second reunion, I watched my parents laugh with Daniel. I saw them speak kindly about my work. It wasn't perfect, but it was honest. After dinner, my mother squeezed my hand. "You didn't shut us out," she said softly. "I didn't want to become what hurt me," I replied. That was the truth. Ruthlessness is easy. Boundaries are harder, but they last longer. Looking back, the mansion was never the real victory. The real victory was this. They once told me a reunion was for family. Now they understood that family isn't control. It isn't silence. It isn't curated photos and erased chairs. It's respect. The night that screen door slammed, I felt small. Today I feel steady. And steady is stronger than pride. If someone shuts you out, don't beg to be let back in. Build something so solid they have to knock. And when they do, you decide whether the door opens. That choice, that's power.